Hello, Jeff. Thanks for joining me. This is a massive pleasure. I'm really glad to talk to you. Our listeners are going to get a massive kick out of this because you're a big part of In Session Film lore around here. We're
Oh,
big fans of your work. Midnight Special was especially a profound experience for me. I was
thank
a
you.
new father at the time, and it deeply resonated with me. I cannot thank you enough for that film.
Wow, thank
It
you.
really is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Man, that's so great
Yeah.
to hear. Because it's
Yeah.
not like that movie like tore down, the box office or anything. And
Uh-huh.
uh,
Yeah.
but as I've been out on this press tour, more and more people talk to me about it,
Yeah.
and it means the most to me. It is the most personal film that I've made. So
Yeah. I can
thank you.
imagine. No, I remember the experience vividly because it was me and I guess to your point, like three other people, but the people behind me were talking the whole time. I was so annoyed. And it got to the point where I actively was like, I'm so into this movie, I have to move. So I moved all the way to the front to get as far away from them as possible and ended up having this life-altering experience. It was unbelievable. So
Thank, thank you.
yeah. Uh, See, I'm very excited to talk to you. You're now back with the Bike Riders, which explores the Chicago Motorcycle Club in the 1960s. I know this is a project you've been contemplating for a long time now, going back to when you first read the book. What drew you to this story and these characters, and did that evolve at all over the last few decades?
I mean, it definitely evolved. My big brother Ben, who's in a band called Lucero, he gave me the book in 2003.
Mm,
So, every film I've made with Michael Shannon, I've been talking about, wow, we should make
nice.
a biker film, man, this 60s biker
Hmm.
film.
Yeah,
And the truth is, for the first 10 years, I could kind of pitch it to you, I could kind of tell
sure.
you the middle and end, and you'd think, oh, he's really got that figured out, but I didn't.
Hmm.
Um, what what really drew me to the book is obviously first the photographs. Anybody that's
Mm,
seen
yeah.
Dan Klein's photographs, they're just cool looking, like
Hmm.
they're cool looking because he was really photographing people. You see these faces, you see these details.
Yeah.
Um, you could tell he was obsessed with people. But then you get to the back of the book and it's interviews that he just recorded on a reel to reel that he carried around with him. And they read like monologues from a movie. They
Mm,
disconnected monologues, but monologues.
sure.
And it's just people talking about the way they view the world, the way they view themselves, and motorcycles. And
Yeah.
you put these two things together, the photographs feel romantic and the
Yeah.
interviews feel unvarnished, and they feel um, sometimes cruel, sometimes funny, but they definitely feel like they're filled with, flesh and blood. Uh,
Mm,
and you get this full kind of picture of a subculture.
yeah.
And as a filmmaker who wants to bring people into a world that they maybe haven't seen before, don't feel really comfortable with, or just don't know,
Hmm.
those are the details that you need. That's the stuff that
Hmm.
makes it work.
Sure.
Otherwise, just affectation.
Yeah.
And I wasn't part of this world. I'm not from the Midwest. I wasn't born, yet when
Hmm.
these photos were being taken or interviews. So I
Yeah.
needed all that detail. And so you, as a filmmaker, you're looking at what Danny Line did, and you're like, he
Hmm.
basically gave me an instruction manual for bringing a subculture back to life.
Yeah. I'm not from the Chicago area, but I am from the Midwest, and I very much felt that aesthetic in the film for sure. I especially lived in Cincinnati for about a decade or so, and you very much brought me back to that area
Oh, good.
without you
Oh, good.
captured that in the film
Oh,
for
good, good.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of conversation has been had about the accents and things, and it's because we had all this audio of these real people. Danny, I became
Mhm.
friends with them, and he gave me this audio, and it is as much a character as the buildings and the motorcycles and the hair, and
Yeah.
it is these
Hmm.
voices. Coming from the South, I've I've known for a long time that regional accents are being diluted. They're
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
disappearing from our culture, and to dip back into this audio. I mean, we leaned into it heavily, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Accents are such a big part of the movie. It comes through great in the performances.
Thank you.
And the culture that you capture on camera is interesting as well, because I heard that you're not into biker culture all that much,
Right.
that even doing the research was a little daunting at times.
Yeah.
But no one captures Midwestern America the way you do. It's what sets you apart and why I think your films are so engrossing. So, despite not having any connection to biker culture, what was the process like in capturing it so vividly the way you do? Was it just trying to, was it the inspiration of the photographs itself, or was it something more? Because you do capture it in such an engrossing way in the film.
Well, thanks. It really is the book. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
I found myself just out of kind of a need for due diligence. I would kind of Google other stories and other things, and I just every time I looked into kind of the realities of this biker club, I I got intimidated, but I just didn't. It just didn't interest me very much.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there's some really kind of cruel stories out there that you would
Sure.
think might make good fodder for a film, but like, why didn't they
Yeah.
turn me on? Like, why didn't I feel
Yeah.
connected to those?
Mhm.
It's because I'm not into, I'm actually not into those details. What I'm into are the people that Danny talked to. And what
Yes.
you realize
Yeah.
is the people he talked to, they don't exist anymore. What I mean by that is, um, they didn't have a relationship with a biker gang because it hadn't been formalized, it hadn't been organized, it hadn't been truly defined yet.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in this infancy of this club, and they don't really, they know they're part of something, you know, obviously
Mhm.
specifically they formed the name of this club, but they didn't really know what its implications were going to be. It's
Mhm.
not like it had become an organized crime outfit or you know, a drug running operation or
Sure.
anything that might be applied later in life. But and that's what attracted me. It's
Yeah.
that they're they didn't have a clear purpose or a clear goal yet. They were in the
Yeah.
middle trying to figure that out, and
Yeah.
now that felt interesting to me.
Yeah. That's what's really interesting about the film, is that much of it feels like a hangout movie.
A
It's
hundred
just
percent.
these
It's
guys
a
just
weird
hanging out.
movie. And I, you know, I don't want to undo all of the brilliant marketing that makes it look entertaining, but it's a bunch of
Yeah.
people sitting around talking about
Yeah. Yeah.
their lives and how they live them. And
Yeah.
I love that. And then, you know, you throw in some fist fights and, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
burn a bar
It,
down.
yeah, 100%. And I think it also allows you to explore this unconventional love triangle that forms with Austin Butler's Benny character at the center, and he's being pulled in different directions by Jodie Comer's Kathy character and Tom Hardy's
Yeah.
Johnny character, which makes for interesting drama, but it's also the centerpiece of the film's thematic nucleus as well. So, in addition to the hangout quality, the infancy of this club kind of forming, could you talk a little bit more about forming that specific dynamic as it funneled through that prism? And
Sure.
what was that? What are the differences, or maybe the evolution of what's there on the page, but also how that informs what you do with the camera? Because you do some really interesting things with the camera
Thank you.
to inform that dynamic as the film goes.
Well, you know, this love triangle is kind of, that's the part I made up.
Mm,
You know, yes, it is a collection of these stories that are pulled directly from the book. You know, I'd probably say
mhm,
70% of the dialogue is directly taken from the interviews that Danny did. So it
mhm.
has this real kind of hybrid docudrama feel. But at some point, we've got to tie these things together, loosely or
Sure.
not. And in the book, there's a real woman named Kathy that speaks about a real man named Benny that, you know, she met and had this kind of whirlwind romance with, and she got kind of swept up and taken out of her somewhat normal life, working class
Yeah.
life, into this biker club. And she speaks about him in such passionate, kind of interesting, introspective ways, um,
Mhm.
that I knew that relationship would be central to the story, but it didn't feel like enough. Just
Sure.
a woman wanting this guy to stop riding. Like, we've kind of seen that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But um, but then I thought, well, what if you had this other character who's in charge of the club, and Johnny, there was a real guy named Johnny, but he's not a big part of the book. He's only interviewed once.
Mhm.
Danny later would tell me he just didn't feel really comfortable around him, and
Mhm.
maybe didn't find him that interesting. I don't know. But the truth is that character's there's a lot of fiction in Tom Hardy's character, Johnny. But I
Mhm.
thought, well, what if both this woman and this guy wanted this young man? So it's
Yeah.
not a love triangle in the sense of two guys fighting over a girl. It's actually this
Yeah.
older man and this woman looking at this young man
Yep.
and kind of coveting him. They covet his youth. They
Yeah.
covet his approach to life. This kind of, you can call it freedom, but really it's that he doesn't give a shit, like
Mhm.
truly, and which
Yeah.
is a unique quality. And there are people like this in the world.
Yeah.
And they're actual, they have this ability to not want to calculate things, and
Yeah.
in their
Mhm.
life, and it's very attractive. It's
Yep.
not realistic for 99% of the world, but when you
Mhm.
encounter one of these people, they are very romantic and they are very attractive. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden now I'm thinking about the narrative conflict of, well, when this woman falls in love with this man and she sees how dangerous this club is getting because of its evolution,
Mhm.
um, she wants him to stop. But because of that evolution, the leader of this club is realizing he's ill-suited to run it, and he needs
Mhm.
this young man to take it over. So now
Yeah.
these two characters are opposed. So there's narrative conflict. But what makes it a real tragedy and what makes it truly, um, I guess, dramatic is the young man that they've picked is completely ill-suited for what they want out of him.
Yeah.
He's a human being not designed to carry the weight of other people's aspirations. So she wants to
Mhm.
give him all of her love, and he doesn't want to carry that.
Yep.
Johnny, played by Tom Hardy, wants to give Austin Butler's character the keys to the kingdom and this thing that he's built that he cares so much about, and he doesn't want that responsibility. Now
Yeah.
he'll jump off his bike and literally, you know, rip a guy to shreds if he feels like somebody's hurting Johnny.
Mhm.
But if Johnny asks him to take over responsibility, he's not built for that. So now all
Yep.
of a sudden it's tragic because you have two people that care deeply about this young man, and he can't hold what they need him
Yep.
to hold.
Yeah, that's what's so great about the use of irony in the film is that both Johnny and Kathy want Benny for different reasons, but they're both after him. But Benny's willing to walk away at
Yeah.
any moment.
In
And
fact, probably
seeing
wants to.
and he
Just
wants to.
waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fascinating to see how that unfolds, especially given the performances here. And I do want to talk about that a little bit because aside from the blue collar aesthetic of your films, I would argue what sets them apart is how you capture these exquisite moments of performative subtlety. I think of Matthew McConaughey in Ty Sheridan in Mud, Ruth Nega's Eyes in Loving. I will forever be haunted by Roy taking that one last look at Alton in Midnight Special. And of course, it's a pivotal aspect to Austin Butler's character in the Bike Riders. The characters in your movies often express so much through internalization. Is that something you consciously build out beforehand, or is it instinctual and it comes out organically in the filmmaking process?
I guess it has to be a little bit of both.
Hmm.
You know, you I like the mantra that filmmaking is a visual medium. And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and when I write these scripts, I direct on the page. I don't know if you've gotten to encounter any of my scripts. I'll send you some. But
Okay.
but
Yeah. Sure.
you know, um, there's some rules. Scripts are really simple. You've got the heading, which just tells you if you're inside or outside, where
Yeah.
you're at, if it's day or night. Very simple. Then you've got lines of action and you have lines of dialogue. There
Hmm.
are very few modifiers in there. Sometimes you can have a parenthetical under the dialogue that says like whispered or something. But so then a
Yeah.
lot of attention goes to those lines of action. Most
Yeah.
attention goes to the dialogue, basically because of the spacing. So a lot of people pay
Yeah.
attention to dialogue because in a
Mhm.
script, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just reading. When do people start talking? Like,
Yeah.
and it's something that the format of screenplays really, um, eh, for better or worse, it gives more credence to dialogue. Um,
Yeah.
and the actions, paragraphs. Uh, it's not a book, like it's not the place for you to write the inner monologue of your character. It's really for screen direction. If you read a play like he enters stage left, like
Sure.
that's
Sure.
really what it's meant to be there for.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes there's some confusion about what action does, because people use it as inner dialogue. And I very early on said, no, I'm not going to use camera direction, and I'm not going to use inner monologue in these action sequences. I'm just going to tell you what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I'm directing on the page, and if it opens on a character walking, character's feet walking across the bar, that's what I'm going to write about.
Yeah.
And when you add that kind of austerity to your screenplays, then you are very much, and this is a long answer to a short question. What you're doing is you're making sure that whatever behavior you need to translate is translated visually, that we can
Yeah.
see it, that it's a thing that we can process. Now, it is I think it's a cool approach to screenwriting, but I do not underestimate the fact that then I get to go cast Michael Shannon, and Michael Shannon gets to read that
Yeah.
paragraph and go, yeah. And he actually knows how to materialize that
Yeah.
feeling, that
Yeah.
emotion on his face. I get to go
Yeah.
work with Jodie Comer, who's one of the best actors I've ever worked with,
Oh my
who
gosh.
gets to
Yeah.
do all of this stuff on her face that is all subtext. It's all subtext. She'll
Uh-huh.
say this one thing, and then her mind is working on another thing. I get to go cast Austin Butler, who is James Dean in the sense that you're not giving him any lines in this movie. And he has all of this emotionality that's working under the skin
Yes.
on his face and everything
That,
else,
yep.
but you're not giving him a voice. And so he's just literally just twisting kind of under the
Yeah.
weight of not being able to express himself. And when I look at James Dean, that's what I'm seeing in Rebel
Yeah.
Without. It's the guy that's literally twisting because he
Hmm.
can't define the way he's feeling. And then you got Tom Hardy. And Tom Hardy is just it's like it's like putting a tornado in a clear bottle. And like you can
Yeah.
see it inside there, but it's not coming out yet. And
Uh-huh.
and I've compared him to like it's like his skin vibrates. Like there's just stuff going on inside that guy. And
Yeah.
when you give him a character to play like this, where he actually has to be quite still, and he's quite,
Uh-huh.
he's very in charge. Like he's not silly. He's not a silly man.
Yeah.
Um, then all that vibration just has to sit there, and that's really, I think the effect that I'm very flattered that you bring up. I think it's through the combination of this style of
Mm.
writing and then casting the shit out of these.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you're working with a great cast like that and an American treasure that is Michael Shannon,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
it helps.
you're able.
Like I'm not
Yeah.
sitting here talking to you today without Michael Shannon being in my movies. I'm quite aware
Oh
of
my
that.
gosh, he's fantastic. I mean, obviously I could talk to death about his performance in Midnight Special, but he's equally electrifying in Take Shelter as well. Just a mesmerizing performance there.
Well, I have to say we didn't have him that much for the Bike Riders, but the movie's not as good without Mike in it.
Well, I was gonna say because as you're talking there about the marriage of performance and writing, the scene that really comes to mind, and after people see it, that they'll be talking about is that campfire sequence with Michael Shannon in this film. Like, even though he's got a small role here, you still give him his moment.
Yeah,
And it's an awesome sleight of hand because it isn't necessarily subtle. He's being cathartic, but behind his words is this pain that feels like this is the first time he's ever articulated it in any sort of way. Like
yeah,
he feels some like detached from society, which is a big part of these characters in a lot of ways. They do feel like outsiders
yeah,
and certainly act as much. And I love how, again, the writing there is great, but Michael Shannon is like, he brings pain to that moment that is in contrast to the words in a lot of
It,
ways.
it's
And
absolutely right, and he's better than the writing.
mhm.
Well, the truth is, it wasn't writing. There's a monologue that he gives in this film by a campfire about the draft board and being
Yeah,
rejected.
that's the one. Yeah.
And yeah, that is taken directly from a. I've listened to a real human being, say that, and it's
Mhm.
kind of funny, like he's meaning to like crack his friends up and talking about,
Yeah.
I'm dragging
Yeah.
him down.
Yeah.
And then Mike Shannon shows up, and I'm talking to him before we film, and he's like, "You think this is a pretty funny story, don't you?" I was like, "It is funny, Mike. Your mom drags you out of bed, and you're all drunk." And
Yeah.
he's like, "I don't think it's funny at all." And
Yeah.
then watch him, then go watch what he
Yeah.
does,
It's
and
unreal. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Because you see everyone else around him, they do kind of laugh and
yeah.
they're entertained by the story that he tells, but the
And he
performance
shifts,
he gives is
and he
anything but
shifts
that.
it, and then it becomes
Yeah.
kind of the underpinning kind of philosophy of the whole movie. And it
Yeah.
was there right in front of me. I read it, I put it down in the script, but then Michael Shannon made it make sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. This was a lot of fun. I really did appreciate getting to talk to you. I don't know what your next movie is. I know you've talked about doing these Cormac McCarthy novels, adapting them.
Yeah,
A Norman Reedus funny Sony movie could be your next Spring Breakers. I'm just saying, it's on the table there as
it
well.
could happen. It could happen.
Yeah, but all joking aside, thanks for joining me. This was a huge pleasure. I really do appreciate your time.
Thanks, JD. I appreciate your question.